You're listening to the Murphology Podcast. Thanks for tuning into the Murphology Podcast. I'm your host, Kathy, aka Murph, and I am here to give tips and information about group bicycling and bicycle touring with a focus on the Midwest and hopefully provide some entertainment for you as well. Well, with me on the podcast today is Erik Berg. Hey, Erik.
Hey, Kathy. How you doing today?
Really good, really good. How about you?
I'm great.
Good.
Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, it's going to be a fun episode, I think. So Erik is a bicyclist, which is why he's on the podcast, but he's also the owner of a pretty cool bike-packing gear company. So we're going to get into both of those things in a little bit. But how about first question, I like to ask this to most of the people that come on the podcast is, tell us where you live and what the biking culture is like there.
Okay. Yeah, well, I live in Chaska, Minnesota, which is a suburb of Minneapolis. Mm-hmm. And I would say we have a really great biking area here. We have bike paths throughout our community. We can actually hop on some old railway beds and ride right down into the downtown Minneapolis area.
Nice.
We got a nice really park reserve that has got paved paths all throughout it. And I've even got some really great single track mountain biking trails nearby I ride too.
I feel like anytime I talk about like Twin Cities or Minneapolis, people brag about the bike trail options. So it sounds like you can confirm that.
Absolutely. Yeah, we are spoiled with our bike trails, I think.
Awesome. And then like you mentioned, single track plus paved. Is there also good gravel riding in your area?
Yeah, absolutely. Actually, Chaska is like one of the far suburbs of the Twin Cities, so if you just ride a little bit to the west, and it's all gravel roads and kind of rural farmyard area, so it's be really great for gravel riding as well. Man,
it sounds like you've got the best of both worlds. You've got inner city close by, and then you also have rural.
Yep.
Awesome. Well, I'm guessing that you also bicycle because you do own a bikepacking gear company. Maybe describe why you ride.
Well, for me, like I love being outdoors, whether it be hiking or canoeing, and I think bicycling is really a great way to enjoy the outdoors. So for me, it's really a way to get outside and enjoy nature, whether it be going through the forest, riding single track, or just getting out and exploring new areas outside.
Oh yeah, I definitely agree. Well, have you participated in any bicycling events, whether it's a weekend trip or a charity ride?
Yeah, I've done, it's called the Tour de Tonka, and it's a bike ride they put on every year. It's a fundraising event for the Minnetonka School District.
Oh.
And it's a really fun event. They have 8 races ranging from 16 to 100 miles, and it just takes you around Lake Minnetonka through the different communities, and I think last year they had 3,500 riders, so it's a pretty big event, and there's rest stops around along the way where you can get some snacks and drinks and some live music, and it's just a really fun event to get around the whole community and see the whole area.
And is it a road biking event?
Yep, it's a road biking event. A few parts are on bike paths, but it's all paved.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a one-day event, even if you're doing all the 100 miles?
Yep, it's a one-day event. Yep,
Awesome.
Usually it's beginning of August.
Okay. Well, tell us about a couple of biking adventures you've been on. I know we briefly talked about one before we were recording.
Yeah, I've done the Mattahay Trail twice now, actually. Yep, it's located in western North Dakota in the Badlands, so kind of in the same area where Theodore Roosevelt National Park is, near Medora.
Okay.
And it's all single track. It's about 100 miles long, and there's campgrounds spaced out between 18 and 25 miles apart along the trail. And it's all, it's just Badlands. So you're kind of going over buttes, going down, switch back, single track, and then across valleys and things like that. And it takes about 4 days to do. I've done it from the north to south, and I've done it south to north. And, it's just a really, really amazing backcountry ride.
And what's the terrain like? I'm assuming there's a little bit of elevation involved, or?
Yeah, so it's Badlands, so it's all constantly changing terrain. I mean, you're climbing switchbacks and then riding over a butte, and you're going down, descending, switch back to the other side, and then going through kind of a wash or a river valley.
Wow.
There's river crossings. You get to cross the Missouri River at one point where basically up to your waist in water and put your bike on your shoulder and
Oh my God.
hike through and get to the other side and keep riding.
Wow. And what kind of bike did you use for this?
I just had a mountain bike. At that time I just had my older mountain bike, which had 26-inch wheels, a basic front suspension, and rim brakes. It was after the last time I did that ride where I decided to get a little more into the mountain bike, and I got a new bike after that. Actually,
nice.
A 29er hardtail.
Yeah. It's funny how, when you cross water, how you lift your bike up as if you don't want to get your bike wet, but yet you get your entire body wet. And then there'll be other times when your bike sits outside, for days in the rain.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so you're on this 100-miler, and like you mentioned, it takes 4 days to do it. Are the campgrounds like part of the trail system, or do you stealth camp, or how does that work?
Yeah, so the campgrounds are part of the trail system. I mean, you can also drive to them, but they're actually on the trails themselves. So you kind of come to these campgrounds along the way, and there's campsites there, and with you can do your campfires and your cooking, and there's pump water along the way. So yeah, that's the big thing is water. So you basically have to carry all your water for the day with you, and then once you get to these campgrounds, then you can pump the water out of the ground and refill your bladders and all that whatnot. So
sure. And are you also carrying all your camp gear and your food and all that stuff?
So we did not do it that way. We were kind of supported.
Oh, cool.
Where we had, we basically rented a U-Haul trailer, and all of our camping gear and food and stuff would go into the trailer, and then someone would drive it to the next campground. And then when we were riding, we'd just have, our water, obviously, and then our lunch and whatever snacks we needed for the day. That's
the way to do it. So when you're on these sorts of bicycling adventures, especially single track, have you ever come across any mishaps or weird things that have happened in the middle of nowhere?
Well, a few things. We did run into a few snakes.
Ooh.
And I have one good story of we were kind of descending kind of a traverse across we're kind of descending down a steep hillside. And half of our group kind of went past this bush, and then someone noticed there was a rattlesnake in the bush. It was kind of coiled up and rattling at us. So we were kind of separated. Our group was separated by this rattlesnake, and to the right of the trail was steep uphill, and to the left was steep downhill. So we kind of had to wait for the snake to kind of make its way off the trail, which it didn't seem clear how or when it was going to move because it didn't really have very many places to go.
Right.
But it finally did kind of take off into the bush a little bit deeper, and then we kind of kept going.
Yeah, and you don't want to mess with that. You don't want to put a stick and, try and hurry it along.
No, you definitely do not want to get too close to one of those guys.
You don't think about rattlesnakes here in Iowa.
No, neither in Minnesota. We don't think about them too much.
Yeah. What did you say the name of that trail was?
It's called the Mattahey Trail.
Mattahey Trail.
Yeah, and it's another unique thing about it is it's all single track, and it's kind of out in the middle of nowhere. So to mark the trail, within every time within distance, you should be able to see a big wooden post. They kind of cut at an angle at the top, and then they kind of have engraved the picture of a turtle in there. So that's kind of how they mark the trail. So whenever you should be able to see one of these wherever you're riding, so you kind of know where to go.
Okay, that's pretty cool.
And they also have you're going through a lot of kind of ranch land as well. So the ranchers don't want bikers leaving gates open for their cattle to get out. So they've actually designed and put in all these self-closing gates. So once you get up to a fence, you kind of lift the gate open, and then once everyone gets through, it's spring-loaded and it closes again. So it's kind of cool thing.
Yeah.
That trail.
You think that it's fancy and made for the bikers, but really it's saving the cattle from getting out.
Yeah, it's not for the bikers' convenience. That's for the cattle.
Hey, listeners, a quick interruption to tell you this week's podcast is sponsored by Moosetreks Bikepacking.com. They've got a great line of products for bike packers. One great new product is the Top Tube bag. It holds a lot more than you'd expect, and I love that it has an easy one-hand access. Check out this Moosetreks Top Tube bag on Amazon and enter promo code Murphology to get 20% off. Well, speaking of bike packing, you are the owner of a successful line of bike packing products, and your company name is Moosetreks. So hopefully listeners are familiar with your brand. But do you want to give us a little bit of history about how Moosetreks came to be?
Sure, yeah. It really came out of me becoming more interested in bike packing and all these different bags you see people putting on their bikes. And, I was interested in trying some of these products, but it was really the price was so high for a lot of these things, for like the frame bags and some of these different bike packing packs, that it really kind of turned me off to the whole idea of getting involved in it. So I figured, there must be other people with the same concern or the same thought as me. So I decided that I just go ahead and make our own bags. So it started out with the frame bag. I was really interested in frame bags. I thought they looked really cool on bikes, and it's a really great place to store gear on your bike. I mean, it keeps all the weight kind of low and within your center of gravity, so it really doesn't affect the handling of your bike as much as other kind of types of packs would. We came out with a line of frame bags. We have kind of 6 different sizes for 2 different types of bikes. So we have frame bags for kind of road bikes or touring bikes in 3 different sizes, as well as another line of frame bags for mountain trail bikes in 3 different sizes. So we have 6 different bike bags, or 6 different frame bags that are kind of designed to fit pretty much any kind of bike anyone's going to have, any size or type of bike anyone has. Of course, the complaint with frame bags is like that takes away where your water bottle cage would go. So next we decided to come up with a line of stem bags. So it's just a little pouch that attaches to your handlebars and your bike stem, and there's a loop to attach to your bike fork. And then you can put in your water bottle. It's a little pouch. You can put in lots of other things too. You put in your snacks or any other gear, or your keys or wallet if you're just doing kind of casual.
Or if you're like me, I have one of my bikes is a touring bike that has a hub generator, and it has a USB port. So I use the USB port, and then the cord and the phone fit perfectly in that little stem bag.
Yeah, it's a really versatile little bag or pouch. I mean, you can put 2 of them on your bike at one time. You can put one on either side of your bike stem, basically. So yeah, you can store a ton of stuff in there, and it's actually an easier place to access your water bottle, I find, than your cage below. So I actually use the stem bag every time I go riding. I put it on, even if it's a short ride.
Awesome. And I want to go back to when you said, hey, I decided that I was going to make my own bags. Do you have like someone in your family, or are you handy actually using fabric and sewing, or did you try and find somebody that could do it for you?
Yeah, so I don't sew myself, but we went out and found a factory who's able to do sewing for us. That's kind of the
right. So you had your vision, and then you're like, I got to find somebody who can turn this vision into actually something that people can use.
Exactly. Yep.
Cool. And how did you pick the name Moosetreks?
Right. So yeah, of course I live in Minnesota, and I love visiting the North Woods and the lakes of northern Minnesota. And actually, the lake we visit most often is Moose Lake.
Oh. In
northern Minnesota. So that is kind of the combination of our favorite lake we visit with bike packing or bike trekking. So we came up with Moosetreks as our name.
Perfect. I love it. And the logo's pretty cool too. So hopefully listeners can pop up on your website after they're done listening to this podcast and check out your logo.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Okay, so you mentioned stem bags, and then you also mentioned the frame bags, but do you have like a favorite product that if anybody ever talks about bike packing, you're like, oh my gosh, I got to tell you about this?
Well, I think stem bag is like the number one bag to check out if you're into bike packing or any type of bikers. Mm-hmm. You're really going to love that bag. But we just have a new product we just came out with, and it's a top tube bag. So it attaches the top of your bike frame right in the top tube. Mm-hmm. and attaches kind of to your head fork area. And it's like a single zipper opening, and it's really a large bag, so you can put your cell phone, your wallet, your snacks, keys, all sorts of stuff in there, and it's nice, easy access. And it's another great option for not just bike packers or bike tourers, but anyone commuting or just fun riders. So get stuff out of your pockets or out of your backpack and onto your bike where it's easier to ride with.
And I own this item that you're talking about, and it's super easy to get in and out of because the cord is at the bottom, closest to your body, so really easy to use one finger access to get in it, and it's just handy. Like you mentioned, putting your phone or your wallet or keys or snacks, whatever, right there. Well, that is definitely a good, exciting new product that people need to check out.
Yeah.
Well, how do you see cycling continuing to be in your future?
Well, I hope to do a lot more cycling in the future. I love exploring new single track bike trails. I love getting off-road into the woods and forests. I would love to do, I know I've been listening a lot to your podcast, Kathy, and I think it's great, and hearing about the long-distance bike tours, and I would love to do some more of that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know. I would really love one day to do an international bikepacking trip. I think that's a great way. I know in my previous work, I've spent a lot of time traveling in places in Asia like Taiwan and China, and in Taiwan especially, I would a lot of times on weekends I would try to rent a bike from someplace, and I found that to be a really great way to kind of explore kind of outside the normal places you would go in a foreign country.
Oh yeah.
You just get on a bike and I would just ride in one direction into the mountains or along the coast or something like that. And so I would love to do like a long distance international bike touring trip.
Yeah, and the longer that I'm in this, podcast or just talking about bicycle touring, it's amazing how many countries are super, super bike friendly. Like bikes almost outnumber vehicles.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I think that especially Taiwan is such a great place to visit by bike because they do have a really good bike culture there. So a lot of people are cycling.
Mm-hmm.
And one thing you don't think about very much is you're always within a really close bike distance of a 7-Eleven, for example, which is really great if you're doing a lot of biking because one, you get air conditioning, which is nice in a tropical country, and cold drinks and cheap, delicious food right there within access all the time. So.
That's awesome. I was not expecting you to say that. I thought it was going to be something about tropical jungle and exotic animals, but 7-Eleven's good too. Everyone needs a soda or a snack. Well, we are doing this recording in December, which you and I both live in the Midwest. So, each day is a mystery if it's going to be snowing and 10 degrees or sunny and 40. But do you have any advice to give cyclists who are trying to get through the Midwest winters?
Yeah, I think probably the number one piece of advice I'd give would be to dress appropriately. Now, I know you might think that means, okay, dress warm, but you don't want to wear too much because when you're biking, of course, you're going to get hot and warm and everything. So you don't want to dress too warm. So, layers is a great idea. So you want to be able to, take some layers off and hopefully have a place to put them on your bike. And then also, I think it's really great to wear breathable clothing. So when I ride in the winter, I like to ride fat bike in the winter. And I wear some of my cross-country skiing gear. I also like to cross-country ski. So I have a cross-country ski jacket and kind of a pants. The pants are great because they're kind of form-fitting, so they don't get interfering with your bike chain and your drivetrain. But it's also really breathable, and it keeps you warm enough. And the same thing with the jacket too. So yeah, I think it's really key to dress appropriately and finding the right kind of set of clothing for the weather that you're riding in.
Yeah, and I've mentioned this many times on this podcast, but you always want to start out not cold, but cool, because like you mentioned, once you start pedaling, everything heats up, and you do not want to get wet or sweaty at the beginning of your ride.
Exactly, because then you're going to get really cold.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. Well, back to Moosetreks, you mentioned when you're riding to be able to take off layers and put them on. So there's one thing that people need to do is get some bags on their bikes, right?
Right, yep.
So where can people go to check out your products?
Yeah, so you can check out our website, which is moosetreksbikepacking.com, and you can see all of our products on there. You can also find our gear on Amazon.com. Just search for Moosetreks, and you can find our stuff there, and it's really easy to find there as well.
Awesome. Well, Erik, I'm looking forward to watching your company grow because bikepacking is not going to go away. Bicycling is not going to go away. So I wish you, the best of luck on figuring out the products that people need before they know they need it.
Right. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. And thank you so much for being on the show.
Thanks for having me. I really had a good time. Thanks.
Well, how about a touring tip? This week I'm responding to some listener email. Brian wants me to share a few bike rides and places that I've biked. Thanks for the email, Brian, and here are a few of my favorite rides. First up is the 5-borough bike ride, which takes place in May in New York City. It's only about 40 miles, but the kicker, over 30,000 riders are doing this ride with you. The route goes through all 5 boroughs, including Manhattan, Harlem, the Bronx, Queens, and Brooklyn. It's a very well-organized ride, tons and tons of people. They close down interstates for the cyclists. You go across all kinds of great bridges as well. They do not allow unregistered riders. Everyone wears a helmet cover, and I have seen unregistered riders being chased down and taken off the route. Now, I will tell you this ride is a little bit of a white-knuckle ride because you have 30,000 cyclists. You've got all kinds of different abilities. You've got your fast riders out front. You've got a lot of beginner bikers. So you've got to keep your eye on the road ahead of you. I saw at least a half a dozen crashes. Most of them were slow motion, but just keep that in mind if you choose to do this event. Find out more information at bike.nyc. Next up, it's not really a ride, but it's more of a location, and that's the Root River State Trail, one of my favorite places to take my bike. It's up in Minnesota. It covers around 40 to 50 miles and goes through tiny towns, Lanesboro, Wayland, Peterson, Rushford, Houston, and there's also a connector trail called the Harmony to Preston Valley State Trail, and obviously it hits the towns of Harmony and Preston. There's some amazing designated camping areas, great restaurants, great bars, and all kinds of good shopping. My favorite town is Lanesboro, and that's usually what we use as our home base. There's a really cool waterfall for amazing photo ops. Lanesboro boasts it's the bed and breakfast capital of Minnesota. So there must be a lot of bed and breakfasts. We always camp. Anyway, there's lots of fun shops and bars, restaurants. Everything's really close to the trail, and the campground had everything that we needed. You can find out more information about the Root River State Trail at rootrivertrail.org. Riding on the Katy Trail is another one of my favorites. This trail is in Missouri. It's over 240 miles long and has 26 trailheads. There are great stops along the way. There's wineries, there's breweries. The trail's very flat and scenic. Most of it is not paved, so be aware of that. One popular method of riding the Katy Trail is to ride Amtrak. So Amtrak lets riders bring their bikes on. They literally call it roll-on bike. You can park at one point, take the Amtrak to a point far, far ahead, and then pedal your way back to your car. Space is limited for roll-on bikes, so be sure to plan and call ahead. Find out more information about the Katy Trail at bikekatytrail.com. The last ride I wanted to tell you about is Tour de Scottsdale. This is located in Arizona, takes place in October. They have 2 options, 30 miles or 70 miles. The front of the pack is more like a race, but you can definitely make this a leisure ride. The views are amazing. It's beautiful. There's nice elevation, and receiving a pretty cool medal at the end was awesome. And they also have a pretty amazing after party. You can find out more information at tourdescottsdale.net. That's this week's touring tip. Be sure to subscribe to this podcast on your favorite podcast platform. Check out murphologypodcast.com to find all kinds of great info, and email me at murphologypodcast@gmail.com. I appreciate your time today, and thanks for tuning in to listen to the Murphology Podcast. I'll leave you with this quote from the Unwritten Book of Murphology. This quote comes from Sylvester McNutt III. Everything in life starts with your mindset first and your actions second. Your actions follow your thoughts, your beliefs, and ideas. To make a shift to free your energy, start getting your mind right and then take action. Think about it.